eliminating build storms in Jenkins. Have you ever set up a multi-branch job in Jenkins only to find out that you're going to be waiting for a while because all of a sudden you've created a build storm? Now it's possible to eliminate these build storms by suppressing events. Here's today's starting point. I have a Jenkins LTS controller version 2.346.1, and attached to this controller, I have a Linux-based agent. I also have a sample repository that we're going to be using in this video. The link to that repository is down in the description. Finally, I've done a lot of setup in preparation for this video that is based on how to forward webhooks to Jenkins using Cloudflared. The link to that video is also down in the description. Before we get started in creating the job, let's go take a look at this repository. I have a repository that has 14 branches and 11 pull requests. By default, when you set up a multi-branch job, it's going to scan for all the branches and all the PRs. But now you may be asking, okay, if I've not been able to do it up to this point, how can I do it now? In a recent release of the Branch API plugin, there was a new feature added that allows for configuring suppressed events in the no trigger properties. What does this really mean? Well, the best way to see this is to actually do it. So let's go ahead and go back over to our controller and let's create a multi-branch job, and I'm going to call it Build Storm. We'll click on Multi-Branch Pipeline and click OK. Now again, I've done a lot of pre-work, so I already have credentials in place to work with GitHub and also a tunnel from Cloudflare so I can receive those webhooks into my Jenkins controller running within my local environment. So I'm going to select GitHub, I'm going to select my credentials, and I can see that it validated against my user. And then let's go and grab the HTTPS URL for this repository. We'll come back over here and click on Validate. We can see the credentials are okay. The credentials it's referring to is here. It's connected to this repository. So far, so good. And we'll leave everything else default. Discover branches, discover pull request from origin, and discover pull request from forks. Again, no changes here. Everything stays the same as normal. So when we go ahead and click on Save, we're going to see that it's scanning the repository and it's finding remote branches. So it found a Jenkins file on the main branch. It's checking all my other different branches. And then it's also checking pull request. And as you can see here on the left side, since I only have one executor available to this controller, I have a big queue of jobs that are waiting to run on this controller. Now for my example, my Jenkins file is very, very short. It's just doing an echo. But if you had a more robust Jenkins file to where there were lots of things going on, at this point, a build storm could starve your complete environment of all agent resources. So how do we now make a change to this job and not have this build storm even occur? Well, actually, we're going to delete this job and then we'll create it new with the correct setting. Now, before I do that, let me go ahead and just stop all of these jobs. And if you've created these build storms before, this is probably a normal process that you go through and do yourself. You're just clicking on the red X and just getting rid of the jobs as they're setting in queue. Again, I only had a handful, so it's not a big deal for me to do it. Okay, and let's see. Are we done yet? I think we are close. This final one is now completing. And now that it's done, okay, so if we take a look back at the top, we don't have any jobs running. If we take a look at our build storm job, we can see that we have 3 branches. We have main and feature 12 and feature 13. And we take a look at our pull requests. We have PRs 1 through 11. Some of these ran, some of them did not run because I had went in and canceled the jobs. But in reality, what I want to do when I set this job up probably initially is I don't want that scan to automatically fire off each of the jobs. Again, if we take a look at our scan repository log, we can see that it found a Jenkins file and then it scheduled a build for branch main. We can see that a Jenkins file was found for feature 12 and it scheduled a build for feature 12. So this is the pattern. By default, if a Jenkins file is found, or however you have that script path named, if that file is found, a job is going to be scheduled for it. So let's go ahead and delete this job and we'll create a new one with the same name. Okay, everything's deleted. We'll say new item. In fact, sort of the same name. Let's call it Build Storm Fixed. We'll just call it Fixed. Let's click on Multi-Branch Pipeline, click OK. Again, the setup is very similar. We're going to add a branch source, GitHub, since I'm using GitHub. I have my username. Let me go and grab this URL again. We're going to leave the behaviors in place, but we're going to change our property strategy. So we're going to add a property to our property strategy. Just to make sure, we didn't mention this before, but the mode is by Jenkins file and the script path is Jenkins file. So that's how I have my file named here. So Jenkins file is right here. And in fact, if you want to take a look at it, it's just sleeping for 10 seconds and then echoing out test. It could have been, hello, I use test. Let's add a property. And the property that we want to add is suppress automatic SCM triggering. Now, you may have done this in the past, but there were no suppression strategies that you could use. You could only suppress them based on branch names. Now, this is a regex that we want to go ahead and apply to branches. In my case, I want this to apply to every branch within my repository. So I'm going to change this $$ to a $. So that means any branches, whether it's a PR, whether it's a branch, doesn't matter. I want this rule to apply. Now, what are our options? If we take a look at suppression strategy, the default is for matching branches, schedule all builds. This has been the default up until this point of branch API. So nothing is suppressed. That's what we just saw when we ran the job to begin with. We have two options. We have for matching branches, suppress builds triggered by indexing. In other words, continue to honor webhooks. And secondly, we have for matching branches, suppress builds triggered by webhooks, continue triggering from indexing. So for our first one, just to see how it works, let's select continue to honor webhooks. Let's go ahead and click on save. And notice what happens in our scan repository log. We found a Jenkins file, but we did not schedule a build for branch main. Notice here for feature 12. We found a Jenkins file, but we did not schedule a build for branch feature 12. And if we scroll all the way to the bottom, we see this pattern play out over and over again. Notice it only took about 8 seconds, probably about the same as the previous job. But if we take a look at build storm fixed, notice that none of the jobs have been run. We can see by hovering it says not built. Same thing with our pull requests. Again, none of these have been run. Go back over to our branches tab and let's watch main. Let's go into our repository. We are on the main branch. Let's make a change to the README. We'll click on this and say test. We'll scroll to the bottom, click on commit changes, and through the tunnel that I have, what we're going to see momentarily is that main should fire off. Now it doesn't appear to be. Actually it is. So if we take a look here, we can see that it's moving. Let's take a look at the multi-branch pipeline events. And if we look here, we can see that we received a push event to branch main in this repository. We found the Jenkins file, changes were detected, and then it cleans up. So if we take a look back at build storm fixed, now we can see that the job ran for main, but not for anything else. So when we made the change on the README in main, the webhook was sent over through my tunnel to my Jenkins controller. It matched on the main branch, and then the job fired off. Now let's go back into this job one more time. Let's reconfigure it. And this time, instead of using the continue to honor webhooks, let's change it to continue to trigger from indexing. So in this case, the only time jobs are going to get fired is when something is indexed. Let's click on save. And this looks very similar to what we saw when we initially set everything up. Main didn't do anything because it's exactly matching as before. But now we can see that on feature 12, found the Jenkins file, changes were detected because it's never been run before, and it's scheduled a build for 12. I'll scroll down here a little bit on the left, and you can see here that we now have a build storm that has occurred because of the indexing that went through this process. So as we're going through, all the jobs are running right now, and still maybe not exactly what we wanted. But because of how we have selected this configuration to ignore webhooks and only do things for indexing, since these items had never been indexed before, therefore the jobs were all triggered. Now let's go back over to build storm fixed. We can see that 12 and 13 are complete. In fact, let me go back over and let's make another change to main. Because what I want to see is if I make a change to any files on main, does the job get triggered? And based on how we currently have it configured, I do not expect it to be triggered. So here I'm going to say test, and I'm going to say test 2. Let's go ahead and commit this change. Now we will still receive the hook. So let's go back into our job and look at multi-branch pipeline events. If we scroll down here, the first one happened at 11:14. This one happened at 11:18. So let's look and see what happened. We received a push event to branch main. It found the Jenkins file, but here, because of how we have that suppression configured, this branch did not get scheduled for a build. So therefore, the job on the main branch did not run. If you have any questions or comments, you can reach out to us on Twitter @CloudBees. If this video was helpful to you, give us a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to CloudBees TV yet, why not? Take a moment, click on that subscribe button, and then ring that bell, and you'll be notified anytime there's new content available on CloudBees TV. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next video.